ഗുഡ് ഈവനിങ്. മാറ്റിനി ഫ്രീ വെബിനാറിലേക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും സ്വാഗതം. 2030 നടക്കേണ്ട ഒരു ചിന്തയും കൂടെ ഇന്ന് നമ്മൾ കണ്ണൻ സാറിൽ നിന്ന് കേൾക്കുകയാണ്. വൺ നേഷൻ വൺ ഗ്രിഡ്. നിങ്ങളെല്ലാവരും ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാമിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്തു. അതോടൊപ്പം വൈസ് അഡ്മിറൽ കണ്ണൻ സാറിനെയും. കണ്ണൻ സാർ, യു ആർ വെൽക്കം.
First of all, many thanks to Dr. Sabu for giving yet another opportunity to share with you a presentation. But this time it's going to be a very important topic, and I really like the number of electrical engineers who are in the audience. We are going to discuss about India's energy network, which supplies electricity to your home, to your school, your hospital, factory, etc. You would be very happy as a citizen if the electric supply is reliable, stable, and uninterrupted, even if it is generated 1,000 kilometers away from your house, or even when it is generated 1,000 kilometers away from your house. We are in the midst of a huge economic growth. And because of this growth, the demand on energy is increasing. So we should find ways and means of meeting the requirement of the economy. But we have another battle which is going on regarding controlling carbon emission. So it means that we have to depend less on coal-based plants or diesel-based plants. Fossil fuel-based plants we have to minimize and increase on renewable energy. Today, the capacity installed of reliable energy and thermal energy are almost the same. Slightly less than 50% is renewable and slightly more than 50% is thermal. So let us say it's almost same and everything is fine. Everything looks okay. And the grid is operating well. In another 7-8 years, renewable energy will overtake significantly the thermal energy. Let us say it will be 2/3 and thermal energy will be only 1/3. I'm talking from the installed capacity point of view. So this 2/3, 1/3 ratio makes the grid very overrich with renewable energy. What will be the impact on the functioning of the grid when you have overrich status of renewable energy? We're going to discuss this today, and I have a presentation made for you. I would minimize the amount of electrical energy content in the talk, because there are many non-engineers in the group. But during question and answer session, we can go into details of the electrical energy. With this, I'm uploading my presentation. Sabu, can you see me? Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is, what will happen to India's one nation, one grid in the 2030s? Because I have already said it is because of excessive renewable energy could be a cause, is my analysis. So let's look at the conclusion. I'm sorry, the introduction. Electrical energy is managed in a country in 3 systems: generation, transmission, and distribution. It goes in that sequence. A transmission system, which we are discussing today, has to ensure reliability, stability, quality of power supply, and is delivered without any interruption to the citizens. Normally, the transmission system operates at a very high voltage because if you have very high voltage, the current is lower and therefore the losses are lower. And the network can be overhead lines or underground cables and even undersea cables. So all these network segments have to operate at very high voltage. The recent extensive integration of renewable energy into the India's transmission network has already highlighted the need for some new technological solutions to match with the less known characteristics of solar energy and wind energy. So we will examine this as we go along in the presentation. Of course, we are the third largest in the world today, and our grid is managed by Power Grid Corporation of India, which is the PSU under Ministry of Power. Within that Ministry of Power, there's one more PSU called the Grid Corporation, which looks after the operations of the grid. Our network is maintained as a nationwide synchronous grid. I'll talk more about this word synchronous, with very high reliability today, flexibility, stability, cyber safe operations. But with more than 75% of the power coming from thermal plants. So just remember this. Today, the grid is getting power from thermal plants to the tune of more than 75%. It's only the balance 25% is coming from renewable energy. In 2030s, when we have to increase the capacity of renewable energy to match India's commitment in COP26, that 50% installed capacity has to be thermal, 50% installed capacity has to be renewable. Second condition, we will use 50% power from thermal only 50% or less than 50%, and the remaining 50% from renewable. This could be some hurdles for the grid. So let us go to the details of the presentation. As I told you, there are three stages of the presentation: generation, transmission, distribution. Generation can be a thermal power plant, can be a diesel power plant, nuclear, hydroelectric, renewable, biomass, any one of this. Today, we have got 453 gigawatts of installed capacity, out of which 243 is thermal, balance is nuclear, and renewable energy is 200 something. So thermal is slightly more than 50%. You can see that. I'm including nuclear along with renewable. In India's context, nuclear is considered as renewable. Now, the distribution side, all of us get 220 volts supply in the house, single phase supply in the house. But if you are institution or you are having a factory, etc., the supply may be 440 volts, three phase. And the supply frequency is 50 hertz throughout India. So when the same frequency is maintained throughout India, then it's a synchronous grid. Now, when you say 50 hertz, it could be 50 plus minus a very small percentage. Our peak demand has been 243 gigawatts as of 23-24, which is almost close to the thermal power capacity is 100%. But as I told you earlier, 76% of 243 is being given by thermal and the balance by renewable. So just for those who are not very familiar with what I am saying, left-hand side is underground, how the cables will enter the underground and go. Right-hand side is overhead transmission line. And as I told you, it can be overhead or underground or undersea cables. Normally, the voltage is very high. In India, it is 765 kV. If it's a DC, it's 800 kV. of course, current is low, and the stepping up of voltage before you transmit over the lines or the cables is done by transformer. At the other end, it is brought down in voltage and given to your house by again a series of transformers. So a good transmission system will balance the supply and demand so that the plant loading factor is good. You may have a lot of capacity, but you may not use all the plants all the time. You will decide which all plants should happen so that each one of them is operating at an efficient plant loading factor. Of course, when suddenly there is a failure in some plant, you'll have to switch off that and connect some other plant and get the plant ready. So there would be some congestions happening on the grid, but the grid is capable of taking care of all this. It's flexible enough to take care of all these contingencies. As I told you earlier, it should be flexible, stable, and reliable in power supply. So why are we calling it one nation, one grid? A little bit of history is required to this. This is India's map. You can see 5 colors. The 5 colors correspond to 5 different regions: south, east, north, west, northeast, etc. Until 1991, each of them were independent regions. Each color was independent. And if they have to take power from another region, which is represented by a different color, then they will take it in DC and convert it to AC and synchronize with their frequency. So what I'm trying to tell you is these 5 regions in 5 different colors were not operating exactly in the same frequency, even though they were attempting to make 50 hertz, but frequency alone is not the issue. Phase also has to be same. So these 5 regions were independent. They were not synchronized together. In October 91, East and Northeast were synchronized to one frequency. This happened between 2 regions for the first time. Then in 2003, West got synchronized with East and Northeast. Then North got synchronized. So by 2006, 4 colors of this, except South, the red one, were all synchronized to one frequency. South was not synchronized due to some technical problem. And later in 2013, all the 5 regions were synchronized to one frequency. And with that, India got one country, one grid, one frequency status. However, Ladakh was not included due to some technical problem. And you know from the map itself, the islands, Andaman Nicobar and Lakshadweep, they were also not a part of the grid, even though they belong to our country. So this is the background of setting up a one nation, one grid. So if you look at these red lines, they are the interconnections between the various grids. Various regional grids. If one region has got a problem, they want more power, then they can draw from another region with some changes taking place in the controls happening at the control center. All these grids, as I told you, are connected by overhead lines or underground cables. About 4.6 lakhs of kilometers of cable overhead lines are there. There are about 275 high voltage substations are there. An interesting point is, today, out of 100% power generated in India, 25% is generated by thermal plants or renewable energy plants, which are under the control of central government. Another 25% by the various state governments, and 50% is by private companies. This is the present status today. And all of them are operating through one grid. It is called the national grid. Now, as I told you, it is controlled by Power Grid Corporation of India, whose headquarters is Gurgaon, Haryana. And it coordinates with all the regional centers as well as the state departments so that the grid operations are controlled. But in November 22, they gave away this operations part to another PSU called Grid Controller Corporation. So Power Grid Corporation today is only looking after design, installation, commissioning, etc. While the grid control operation looks at the method of maintaining reliable power supply over the grid in one frequency. India, as I told you, is at rank number 3 in the world, but we handle only 6.5% of the total electrical energy in the world. Of course, China is 30% and USA is 15%, and hundreds of other countries after India. The red lines which I've shown here are the inter-region transmission lines. They can handle about 112 megawatts, just for details for electrical engineers who are here, which gives the flexibility to the individual regions. As I told you earlier, Ladakh was not included in the grid, but it has been included in 2019. And today, apart from the main grid, in 8 states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, etc., there are separate corridors, green energy corridors, which carry the solar and wind energy separately from the main grid, and they give it to dedicated consumers. We'll talk more about this green corridor later. Today, our ability to match the peak load vis-a-vis what we can generate, we have been able to do it for almost 99.6%. The deficiency was only 0.4% at some point of time in the peak load, while 10 years back it was around 16%. So significant improvement has taken place in One Nation, One Grid operation, which started in 2013. It's 11th year now going on as far as the One Nation, One Grid is concerned. Now let's look at the grid, how it is connected beyond the mainland. This is the connection which is planned towards Andaman Nicobar Islands. It is not there now, but it's planned to be connected to Paradeep in Orissa. Not yet started. 5 years from now, it will get connected by an undersea cable, which will connect from Paradeep to Sri Vijayapuram. Sri Vijayapuram is the new name for Port Blair. You must have read in the papers. So it is supposed to carry 500 megawatts of power from Eastern Grid to Port Blair. I'm sorry, now called Sri Vijayapuram. The cost is already mentioned there. The time is also mentioned there. Today, in Port Blair, it's only diesel generator supply. The whole of Andaman Nicobar Islands are all on diesel generator and some solar. Wind is not there, solar farms. In the phase 1, Andamans will get 250 megawatt out of the 500 designed and installed for. In the second phase, from Andamans, 250 will be given to Nicobar Islands. Nicobar Islands, as you know, is further south. So they will get another cable, undersea cable, which will get connected to Nicobar Islands. So this is 5 years from now. By 2030, Andaman Nicobar Islands will get power from mainland. However, Lakshadweep will continue to be running on diesel generator and solar panels, and there is no plan at this point of time to connect Lakshadweep to either the southern grid or the western grid. It is not planned, so it is not likely to happen before 2030s. Now, this is another photograph which I'm showing you. This is India's southern tip. There may be so many offshore wind farms. Since offshore wind farms, which are going to be installed here, are going to expect to generate a lot of power because the wind velocity is very high there, but they will have similar characteristics. When I say similar characteristics, similar wind characteristics, the speed, the intensity, direction, etc. So they all will be generating almost similar type of power. The variability will be almost the same, and they will all get connected to a huge substation in South India, and from there it will go to the green corridor. This is planned. You may be knowing offshore wind farms, the order is not yet placed. The quotations already been sought by the Ministry of Renewable Energy. And within another 6 months, we should have the installation starting in our waters from where we can get power from the windmill. Today, there are no offshore windmills in India. All windmills in India are on land and not in water. Now, other connections from India. India is connected to Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and even Myanmar. Of course, Myanmar is at 11 kV, others are 400 kV. And these connections, India imports power from Nepal and Bhutan as a part of its agreement. When we funded some hydroelectric projects in their country, we said we take so much of power. But India exports power also to Nepal and Bangladesh. All of you know, we have been exporting power and now it's at the lower level. And to Bhutan, we export power through another line. So today is India net. India was a net exporter. Now we have become net importer because Bangladesh has reduced the amount of power it is taking from India. And you saw in the papers last week, Bangladesh is going to take power of Nepal through our grid or through our line. So that may happen. I think it is going to get commissioned by end of this year, and Bangladesh will start getting power from Nepal to Bangladesh. And the connection to Sri Lanka and Saudi Arabia are under discussions at the moment. So I will show you a sketch of what is going to happen to Sri Lanka. So this is what's going to happen from Madurai. There'll be a land transmission line, then an undersea cable, and from there it will go to their substation in Sri Lanka. It has already been, agreement has been finalized. 500 megawatts transmission line will be given, and it'll be in DC. From AC, it will be converted to DC given there, and then on the other side, it will be reconverted to AC. It's about 180 kilometers of overhead line from, as shown in the graph, from Madurai to Panay-Kulam, and then the undersea cable, and then later across the Park Strait, etc. The final agreement is about to be signed. There was a change in government in Sri Lanka. They have made an announcement that they will follow all the plans, project work, which the previous government has decided. That announcement came last week. The agreement should get signed very soon. A similar DC link with Saudi Arabia is under discussion, and that is not yet gone into further details of agreement. So the power which we are sharing with other countries is not only our neighbors, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. It's going to be Sri Lanka as well, and maybe after 7-8 years with Saudi Arabia. So with this background about the grids layout, grids interconnection, etc., what does the grid, what are the parameters which makes it efficient? So let's look at that. There are 6 parameters which make the grid efficient. I call it figures of merit. So 6 ones are, it should balance demand and supply, definitely, because every day's demand may not be the same. The demand in summer may be different from the demand from winter. The demand during monsoon may be different. Of course, the supply has to be matched to the demand. That is one important factor which is done by the grid corporation. It should be flexible. Sometimes it should be able to integrate with hydroelectric station, sometimes with solar farms. It should also integrate with nuclear power plant, thermal power plant. So it should be flexible enough to integrate with multiple types of energy sources. It should be reliable, of course. It should be stable in functioning. It should utilize the infrastructure which you have built so that the money spent is utilized properly so that the cost of energy transfer from generating stations to the DISCOM is as low as possible. And of course, in the present day domain of cyber, it should be safe. So these are 6 figures of merit. I will quickly run through them. I will not go into too much of details in case there is some questions about a particular figure of merit we can discuss. So let's look at supply and demand. This is a supply position or capacity installed in September 24. As I told you earlier, it's almost 50-50, but not exactly. 44 reliable and 53 is thermal. 44 renewable and 53 thermal. Now, if you look at the consumption, 76, as I told you earlier, has come from thermal, and 21 has come, only 21% has come from reliable. So huge capacity of renewable energy is there, but it has not got utilized fully. And of course, our nuclear power plants have been able to give only 2.8% of the power required for us. So far, it looks okay because our demand has only been 230 gigawatts. As I told you earlier, economy is growing, you want more power. So in 2030, it is expected, or before that, some more details. As I told you, all this I have already told you. In 2030, the capacity would have grown further, as shown in the pie diagram. 60% will be renewable, and only around 30%, 29.9, 30% will be thermal, and 8% will be nuclear. But how will the supply situation be? Let us look at it. Why I'm saying the supply situation looks a close look. The power minister last week, or not exactly last week, about 4 or 5 weeks back, had made an announcement that we require 458 gigawatts of power in 2030 or 32, while available power is 900 gigawatts. Comfortable if you match 900 with 452. But 60% of 900 is renewable. So how does it match? Let's have a look. I'm also trying to tell you, because the last talk which we gave on renewable energy, we said we should have more storage systems. So the government is also progressing projects on storage of energy, both by battery as well as pumped water storage, and is expected about 95 gigawatts will get stored from the renewable energy. So taking that into account, the consumption would be expected to be that after assuming that 73 gigawatts of storage will get consumed out of 95 which is stored, 458, thermal will give 47, that is slightly less than 50, and nuclear 3, storage 12, and RE will be 37. This is 47% of the installed capacity. So of the installed capacity is this, out of that 47% will give power. And renewable, even though the installed capacity is 60, will give only 37%. So we need to look at this, why there is less offtake from renewable, even though installed capacities are very high. And of course, to make sure that all these powers are taken from renewable energy installed in many places, they are belonging to Western grid, they are belonging to Northern grid. So they have been able to expand the interconnection, which I told you in red line earlier. That also has been expanded to 167 gigawatts to make sure they're able to draw power from grids which are having excess installed capacity and thereby make it more flexible in operation. So let's look at the flexibility part. There are, as I told you, there are many types of energy plants connected. This is an interesting aspect. If you look at all the hydro stations in India, they are more in north. If you look at all the thermal plants in India, they are more in the eastern grid. Solar and wind is in the western. So you have a geographical distribution of our energy sources. And each energy source has got its own characteristic. How much time it will take to start a coal plant, how fast you can increase the loading, how much the minimum you can load. So there are many factors in a power plant which need to be considered for the grid operation. So I will go through it in a simplistic manner. So as I told you, there are multiple types of energy in different parts of the country. And I've told you about coal, natural gas, nuclear, hydro, biomass. They have very low variability factor. That means once you switch off and it runs for the day, it runs for the night, again next day, like that goes on, the variations in power are not much. But sun and wind have high variability. They will vary. Sun, of course, you can understand, during afternoon, it will give maximum energy, and then evening it reduces. It becomes zero almost in the night. Similarly, it will depend upon wind pattern. The variability in sun and wind energy is a factor to be considered for your flexible operation. You can't look at solar farm in the night. You can't look at a windmill farm when the wind is almost still. You have to look at other power plants, and you can't switch on a plant, as I'm going to tell now. I told you about solar and wind farms. They can charge a battery, or they can use pumped water to store the energy, etc. Hydro plants take almost 6 hours to start from the time you have decided. Not only for starting, opening the water and starting the generator, etc. You have to give downstream advance notice to people saying we are releasing water. So on average, it has been 6 hours it'll take. But once it is started, you can build up the power which you're going to demand from it, which is a good thing. But you cannot use hydro power plants the way you want, because their water is supposed to match with agricultural requirement. It has to be periodically assessed, saying that it will meet the impending agricultural requirement. So there is a limitation coming in, how much power you can take, how often you can take the power from hydro station, even though it has got good ramp up profile as well as low startup time. But if you take gas power plant, its ramp up is very good and startup time is very low, 4 hours. It's very good. But we're not able to import gas. It's so expensive in the international market. So what is good for ramp up and what is good for low startup time and immediate response, etc. But the gas is so expensive, and we don't have that much of indigenous production of gas. So there's a limitation coming there on how much you can use gas power plant. Coal and nuclear, high startup time. You can't start a nuclear power plant just by switching on something. It takes time to start up. Almost about 20 hours it takes to start up. Similarly for coal. Once you have started, they run well. A nuclear power plant has got good ramp up. You can increase the loading, decrease the loading also. But in coal, you cannot come less than 40% loading due to carbonization which will take place. Now, so each plant has got its own characteristic. So this makes it important for us to know how will you operate this grid when you have plants of different characteristics, and you have to be flexible also, you have to balance the supply and demand also. That's where the grid is controlled by a whole lot of software which is being based on data collected over different seasons, different parts of the day, time, Night loading will be like this, day loading will be like that, on Sunday loading will be like this, weekdays loading is like this. So all these are used for planning the grid loading. And one has to look at this flexibility pattern as our economy grows. As our economy grows, new factories are coming up, new production centers are coming up, their energy requirements are also based on their capacity and their, are they working on 3 shifts or are they working in less number of shifts? All this will depend upon how you want to assess the demand, how much you require. And therefore, you may have to look at borrowing some power from Western grid or Southern grid to run the your grid. And therefore, interconnectivity has to be, the capacity has to be examined. Now, presently, the flexibility is good as of today. And the grid has been functioning very well. How reliable is the grid? So let's quickly go through it. The grid is reliable when it provides uninterrupted, stable, quality power. And reliability, you can make it very highly reliable by design, but it's a trade-off between cost and risk. You can have redundancies factored in your design. You can have making sure power can either come from this grid or that grid. Take care of all this in your design, but they will be very expensive. So you come for a trade-off between cost and risk. And also make sure critical loads like railways, airport, refineries are designed with redundancies in power so that operations are not affected. Nuclear power plants are always directly connected to a major center so that in case you want to island the nuclear power plant for some contingencies, then you're able to do it. And they can be separately confined to whatever shutdown, whatever regulation you want on power, whatever loading you want on the nuclear power plant. It does not affect any other user in the route of the nuclear power plant. They're always connected to a major power center. From there, directly, power is taken from the nuclear power plant, and you can reduce the power based on what is the situation in the nuclear power plant. As I told you, daily and seasonal variations have to be taken into account. So Indian grid, as I told you, it's working very well as of today. There's no problem. It's doing very well. It's one of the best grids, one of the largest grids in the world. Now let's come to stability. It has to be stable. That's what I meant. So I will spend a little more time on this graph. What is shown in orange is the way energy comes from sun. It peaks during afternoon and comes down. Night, it is not there. It is only from 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening. While wind continues even late in the evening, in the night, early morning, you may get some wind. So if the energy from solar, you're able to use for some customer who will use only during that time, who will operate his factory only at that time, morning 6 to evening 6. It depends on solar energy. And of course, some portion can be storage, also can be simultaneously done, because whatever is coming out of solar farms may be more than what the user is going to take. So government is progressing an idea. You remember I told you about green corridor. Establish green corridors, and from the green corridor, give it to factories like electrolysis plant, which make hydrogen. And since this hydrogen is coming based on power coming from solar farms or wind farms, it's called green hydrogen. That green is only to denote the energy used is renewable. So you can plan a parallel grid, a green grid, which will take power from solar panel and go directly to these electrolysis plants and produce hydrogen. and we can use the hydrogen separately. We'll discuss that. So this is the thought which is being progressed by the government. So the variability in solar does not affect the main grid. So wherever you can use it for specific plants like this, then you can divert that power coming towards those factories. But there are many other places, solar farms are there, which are very far away from electrolysis plants. They're coming. I'll tell you why electrolysis plants cannot come everywhere. Before I go to the details of the slide, engineers, there are many in the audience. Electrolysis plants, the main product is hydrogen. Hydrogen is voluminous. If it has to be compressed, and still you require a huge container to keep the hydrogen. You want to export hydrogen to other countries. You can't take it from middle of the hinterland to the seaport. So the electrolysis plant has to be near the coast so that hydrogen can come by big containers or through a pipeline to the harbor, to the jetty, and then charge the ship, and ship will take away the hydrogen. That is the plan, because we are producing hydrogen not only for Indian consumption, but also for export. So the location of electrolysis plants are based on the difficulty in transporting hydrogen, because it's light and voluminous. It takes a lot of space to store hydrogen. So there's a difficulty coming in that. With these factors, let us go a little more details in the slide. So, as I told you, 900 gigawatt is the total installed capacity, out of which solar and wind energy are, as I told you, about 60%. And some part of it is stored in storage, battery plus pumped water. The reserve capacity available after taking away storage, available in the grid, shows that storage levels need some more storage is required, but storage is also equally expensive. So the government is thinking of green corridor, which I told you, where you can have electrolysis plants operating from morning 6 to evening 6 when sun is shining, and thereafter wait for next day to start the plant again. And use of green hydrogen, you can use it for electrical energy. Why I said electrical energy is there are many cars which will run, which will convert hydrogen to, it'll fuse with oxygen and produce power to run the car. Car will be an EV with a hydrogen fuel cell inside in addition. It can run train, it can run trucks. So with the green hydrogen, you can have fuel cell installed in the vehicle, which will convert it to power, and thereafter it's like an EV. It'll run like an EV. So it'll reduce the pollution from transportation segment. That's one advantage. It will, because we are using like this, it'll limit the peak load, because many EVs will, when they are fitted with hydrogen fuel cells, they will not get charged by charging stations. So therefore the load will come down. And as I told you, carbon emission. So setting up a green corridor is a priority for us. But there's always a bottleneck somewhere. Engineers will know that when you set up green corridor and then you have to transmit at high voltage, you require transformers. There's a shortage of CRGO steel today. In the world, globally, 1,500 gigawatts of renewable energy is waiting for transformers. India is in the queue for transformers. India is in the queue for CRGO steel. We can make transformers in the country, but we don't get the steel. We don't have the steel in that much in production in India. We are not able to produce it. So there's a delay. And today the delay is anticipated, something like 2 years delay will take place in many of these transformers appearing to the transformers. So We need to look at some other solution. And here I'm going to take a couple of minutes what China has done. Go back to school books. Sun gives us light and heat. We all have learned this in school. Sun gives us light and heat. Sun's light energy is higher than heat energy, if you look at the energy content. And what we are doing in India today is converting light energy into electricity through photovoltaic cells. It converts. And when the sun is brightest, you get maximum power, as you see in this graph. What China has done, they are gone to heat energy. And also transmits, as I told you, not only light, but also heat in the form of infrared energy. So they have made heat collectors by a series of mirrors. Remember your old days when you could burn a leaf with the help of a magnifying glass? What did you do? You focus the sun's heat energy onto the leaf and leaf burned. Same technique. Keep a series of mirrors inside the collector. It will focus the sun's heat energy onto water, and the water will get converted to steam. So steam will be used for running generator. You produce as much steam as you want, and that steam is available to you stored in the boiler. So even when sun is set, there is still steam available in the boiler for you to run generator. So this is a new way of taking solar energy. Instead of the light route, take the heat route. China has done this. I understand the first plant is already commissioned in China. It's a good idea to talk more about this as we go along. So stability today, we have been able to contain a bit by taking away the solar's light energy away to a great extent, away from the main grid. And therefore, you don't have fluctuations coming during daytime and then going away. So we are able to manage. Last point, cost efficiency in transmission. I'll just run through it. A lot of planning goes on. What will be the load next year? They do it 1 year in advance, and then the discoms are placing their contract for buying energy. Today, if you look at it, 90% of power is coming from 93% is coming from long-term contracts, and some smaller number, 7% is through power exchange, which you can buy. And all this data is monitored very carefully, as I told you, to computerized network, and so that you have built up data, so that you have enough seasonal data as well as daily data of how the consumption is and what power plant we need to run. We also have been, as I told you, interregional transfers have been enhanced by increasing their connectivity. Digitalization is going in a big way in the Grid Corporation of India. So they have been able to utilize their own fiber optic cables run along with transmission line. So they have got a digital backbone where all this data is exchanged in quick time. So let's look at the last figure of merit, security in cyber domain. I'm going to stop at this slide. In 2012 July, 50% of India went without power for 1 day. Many of you may remember this. There was a blackout in this portion, which is shown in the graph, which is in blue color, both dark blue as well as light blue. No power. Because one of the regional grids, which was connected to another, which was taking power from another grid, which is supposed to have two lines. One line was shut down for some repair, and all the power was going through the other line, which tripped which led to the receiving grid trip. And since the receiving grid tripped, it took power from another grid that also tripped. So you have half the country in darkness in 2012, July. I think the date was around 30th or 31st July. Many people thought it was a hacking job done by a foreign country. It was not so. It was due to an electrical defect which had taken place. Just to say, it is not a cyber operation in 2012, but due to some electrical failure. Now, let's look at, I told you about this. The last time we had a cyber attack was in February 22, when control centers in Ladakh were targeted. But since India had made the firewalls very robust and also had very efficient teams to immediately combat the cyber attack, they could manage without major problem. But it is suspected to be from a neighboring country. It had happened. Attempt was made, but didn't cause any serious damage. Now, CERT, which is the agency which looks into all cyber attacks, is a part of this grid network control. And 30 out of 35 centers are already been, vulnerability has been assessed and various measures have been instituted. So, and as I told you, they use their own fiber optic cables. They don't go to the internet necessarily. They have their own fiber optic transmission. So cyber-wise, we are fairly safe at this point of time. Everything is good about the grid, except the variability which may happen to a high extent in 2030 plus because of solar and wind energy. So let me come to conclusions. You know, our grid was commissioned in 2013 as a single frequency grid for the whole India except Ladakh and of course the islands. Ladakh was subsequently integrated. Then green corridors, they started in 2015. 60% of work is over. 8 states are participating in this green corridor, and they will provide exclusively for electrolysis plants which will produce hydrogen. I have to call them green hydrogen because they're using renewable energy, which is required for industries and transports. Hydrogen will be used, let me take a minute, not only by transportation sector, but also by refineries, fertilizer plants, as well as steel manufacturing. All of them require hydrogen. And today, they generate their own hydrogen. All the steel plants, fertilizer plants, and refineries produce their own hydrogen, not by electrolysis, by burning coal and passing steam over it. And a lot of pollution comes from that coal. So once you make green hydrogen within the country, or tell a steel plant, set up your own electrolysis plant, take hydrogen from there, don't burn coal. Similarly for refineries, similarly for fertilizers. You've got more than 50, 60 plants in India of all these categories, which are burning coal. So once we set up these electrolysis plants, then coal consumption will come down, coal emission, carbon emission also will come down. But at this point of time, electrolysis plants have not really gone into full swing. They are still in the process of getting designed and manufactured. So we are going through a patch where coal is the king. Coal will decide how much power we will have in India. It may be dirty because of pollution, but we have no answer than coal, at least till 2035. We can discuss more of this during question answer. I told you about cross-border to Sri Lanka, Saudi is coming, and Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, etc. I told you. Andaman Nicobar is going to get an undersea cable. I told you while poor Lakshadweep will continue with diesel generators. I talked about figures of merit. Of the 6 figures of merit, the only one which will have some challenge, some hurdles to cross, will be stability. Because of renewable energy is coming to 60%, and that is going to have fluctuations in availability of power. So you can't use them into the main grid the way we want, the way we like using from nuclear or hydro or thermal power plants. So there is a question of stability there, right? So this enrichment by RE, we are getting RE enriched, there's no doubt about it, but it comes with some rider. Too much of RE will bring curtailment on the amount of smooth operation of grid. You cannot take that much of RE and still have smooth functioning of grid. You have to disregard the RE or use the RE somewhere else, like for electrolysis plant. So this is a solution which is required for it. I don't know how we are going to solve it. At the moment, the reports of Central Electrical Authority in India, it's not very clear how they will overcome this problem of in 2030s on the issue of stability. Green corridor is one option, as I told you. So finally, the grid is becoming over-rich on RE. We are using light energy, and we will have to depend upon renewable energy up to 40% to meet our demand. And the remaining will have to come from nuclear and thermal, etc. So we need to, this over-dependency, as I told you, we need to solve. Remember the Chinese experiment of using heat energy of sun, infrared, boiling water and producing steam. Why can't we have more nuclear plants? Will our thorium plants come on time? Will they get realized? The first thorium plant is getting ready in Kalpakam, but one plant is not enough. We require about 15, 20 plants. When will they get ready and give a backbone to the power sector, to the grid? So with this, I close my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and there are questions on how we are going to look at 2030s for the grid operation. I'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Namalde grid connectivity kuറിച്ച് sir വളരെ വ്യക്തമായി പറഞ്ഞു. പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് വൺ നേഷൻ ഗ്രിഡ് ഡിസംബർ 2013-ലും അതിനുശേഷം 2019-ലും ലഡാക്കിലും കൂടെ അത് ആഡ് ചെയ്തു. 2015-ല് ഗ്രീൻ കോറിഡോർ ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്തു. ദെൻ ക്രോസ് ബോർഡർ കണക്ടിവിറ്റി ശ്രീലങ്ക ആൻഡ് സൗദി അറേബ്യ ബേസ്ഡ് ആയിട്ട്. ദെൻ 2030-ലേക്ക് വരുമ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടാകേണ്ട പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ഡിഫറെൻറ്റ് ഫിഗർ ഓഫ് മെറിറ്റ്സ്, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ലൈറ്റ് എനർജി യൂട്ടിലൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഗ്രിഡുകൾ, ദെൻ തോറിയം പ്ലാന്റ് ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഗ്രിഡുകൾ, ഇതെല്ലാം 2030-ലേക്ക് റെഡിയാകേണ്ടിയിരിക്കുന്നു. സോ താങ്ക് യു സർ, താങ്ക് യു വെരി മച്ച്. സോ വിൽ ഗോ ടു ഡിസ്കഷൻസ്.
Yes, sure.
Yes, ബിന. ഓക്കെ സർ പറയും ബിന.
ഇത് ഈ സോളാർ എനർജിയുടെ കാര്യം പറഞ്ഞപ്പോഴേ കാലിഫോർണിയയില് ഈ സോളാർ ഫോട്ടോ വോൾട്ടൈക് സെല്ല് ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നതിന് മുമ്പേ തന്നെ വളരെ നേരത്തെ ഇത് സോളാർ തെർമൽ പവർ പ്ലാന്റ്സ് ഉണ്ടാക്കിയിരുന്നു. അത് ഇപ്പോഴും വർക്കിംഗ് ആണ്. ഒരു 300 acres ഉണ്ട് സോളാർ മിറർ ഉണ്ട്. ഇത് ഓയിലോ മറ്റോ ആണ്. അത് ഹീറ്റ് ചെയ്തിട്ട് അതിൻ്റെ ആ ഹീറ്റ് കൊണ്ട് പിന്നെ സ്റ്റീം ജനറേറ്റേഴ്സ് വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. പക്ഷെ അതിൻ്റെ കോസ്റ്റ് ഈ ഫോട്ടോവോൾട്ടൈക്കിനേക്കാളും PV യെക്കാളും കൂടുതലായതുകൊണ്ട് പ്രൈവറ്റ് ആൾക്കാർ എപ്പോഴും ഫോട്ടോ സെൽ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നത് അതിലോട്ടേ പോവുള്ളൂ. അത് എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു ഗവൺമെന്റ് ഒരു കൺട്രോൾ എന്തെങ്കിലും ചെയ്യണമായിരിക്കും, സോളാർ തെർമൽ ഉപയോഗിക്കത്തക്ക വിധത്തിൽ.
I'll respond to that. We discussed this last time also. Today it appears solar source of energy, I'm talking of light energy, photovoltaic cell. If the demand is small, consumer is not occupying a large area and large load, അതായത് an entire campus of a hospital, entire campus of a university, or a shopping complex, a commercial center, where the demand is not, power is not much required, and you can have a cost-effective solution of having solar plus a storage system. Now, I'll draw your attention to Nedumbasheri. Nedumbasheri says he is the only airport in India which is running on solar. That is ശരിയല്ല. Nedumbasheri runs on solar only during daytime. In the night, it takes power from KSEB.
That is.
You can say KSEB's power is adjusted in my solar bill. Oh, that is a commercial answer. But actually, in the night, evening 6 to morning 6, Nedumbasheri runs on KSEB supply. Like it will run for many other institutions if they go for the same model. So I'm not saying it is bad, but the load of Cochin airport comes suddenly on the grid in the night. During daytime, it is not there. Daytime, it is on solar. He is isolated from the grid. Now, if he had storage system, Nedumbasheri, then his dependency on KSEB is less and grid is not affected. But today, there's no problem. Today, grid has got enough cushion. Our installed capacity versus our demand, there's a lot of cushion because more than 55% is non-renewable. You're able to load it. 24 hours a day, you can load it, which is not possible in renewable. Okay. So now I come back to your US example. In US example, which you told me rightly that it is very expensive, China's solution seems to be a little more cost-effective by whatever techniques they have used in making a set of mirrors. I have no idea what the size of the mirrors, how much steam they have been able to produce, because that is not available in public domain. What is available is only that they have done this conversion and they have been able to run generators. Now, whether that will have a similar situation of, okay, you can run one campus, you can run one hospital, and spare the grid of your load. Be kind to the grid and saying, okay, I will be doing it my own. Like what the government has done, rooftop solar. It is actually indirectly telling every citizen, please spare the grid. Please take your own power from the sun. We will give you some money. You take power only when you over and above what you have set up. So definitely a solution is required. A technological solution is required, and its cost effectiveness and its applicability in different regions of India is important. You will appreciate that power supply to the ordinary citizen, it is a state subject, and it has to be done by electricity boards. They are the final, last mile is by them. So you have to get every one of them think alike on this technological solution. Technological solution of one region may not be identical the technological solution to another region. Like look at Northeast. Northeast has got a huge problem. They don't have enough power plants available in that place. There's, unlike many of the other regions, they don't have any nuclear power plant there. They are largely dependent upon hydro. And now solar and wind is also picking up. But coal is also less. They're taking from east. So there is a solution is required. The Central Electricity Authority is not speaking about that solution at this point of time. That's all I have to say. Because they may be planning, but it's not come out in the report.
What I am saying is that the government of India should insist that the companies should make solar thermal power plants. See, in USA, they are making 300 megawatts in that California plant. So there are so many, in Morocco desert also, they have one solar thermal power plant of nearly 300 megawatts. Like that, the government of India should insist that now in the desert areas, they have to make solar thermal power plants and not solar PV.
Yeah, agreed. But that's what I said. It's a part of the technological solution. And it has to get pan-India acceptance. So let's see how it goes. We got 10 years more to, because we also have to simultaneously reduce coal. We can't keep running coal like this.
Anand, can I speak on this topic?
Sri.
Yeah, actually, this using solar, thermal energy, heat energy, like China, there are some side effects. I have read in some books. The birds, actually, it is a very heat intensity is there. Concave mirror, they are using concave mirrors and concentrated the heat at a particular spot. So birds flying on that route, normally they are affected by this heat. And that's an ecological problem is that. This is a small problem. And another one point about the reliability. It's not my question. I just want to tell how our power engineers and we manage power grids. You may have one 2 years back, the 5 minutes blackouts on whole India. You remember? For
It's not
energy
5 minutes. It is
for
1
energy
day.
conservation, there was a 5 minutes blackout the whole over India. But within 5 minutes, we could bring back all the systems into generation. It was really a meticulous work done by all regional and state load dispatch centers. It's a coordination kind of thing. Which took only 5 minutes. I just wanted to point out how efficiently our power grids and load dispatch centers are performing in this flexibility point of view.
Sri, you're only supporting my argument. I've been saying the grid is good. It is flexible, it's reliable, it is stable, it has got demand supply, good equation, it is cost effective, utilization is good. And I also said now, 10 years from now, how are we changing the methods? Do we have an answer 10 years from now? People already started writing about this in many international magazines about similar problem is there in other countries as well. But in India, it is little more magnified than other countries. We are talking this today, and I'm sure this issue will get discussed again and again in different seminars, and some answer will come.
This is a big subject.
It's a very, very complicated subject, very complex subject. But I just want takeaway for all of you is it is not easy to give you power at home.
Everybody
the
can
generation is
contribute,
1,000 kilometers away.
Yeah, that one blackout you mentioned in Ladakh, It was not a cyber
No, no.
attack. It was only a power failure. The similar thing I experienced while I was working in Idiki hydroelectric plant. At the peak time, Tamil Nadu was drawing high power from Kerala, and at a particular time they suddenly shut off all the loads. And what happens? That's a life of water hammer. You know water hammer. All the loads are rejected. Our export is rejected, and all our system get our generators started hunting, and it was about to trip. So what one of our control room operator, one Vegetation, I think he's a Trivandrum, I think, he very quickly he managed by changing the frequency. You can immediately change the frequency little bit, plus or minus, and you can bring the system under control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Manual control, you take over
Otherwise,
and then do
it
it.
will be a cascade tripping. All stations in the Kerala. That was a very good experience I had at that time.
Thanks,
Anyway.
Sri. Thanks for. I knew that KSCB, ex-KSCB engineers will bring some personal experiences onto the table. Thanks.
I'm the only guy sitting here. Anybody else, I don't know.
Veena is there.
Murali sir,
Kannan, you brought up a very relevant point, which is normally not getting enough attention in such meetings. That is the gap between the demand and what the renewable energy can provide. Because both solar and wind, which are not firm supplies, they'll be totally absent at some point of time. Because as it said, solar is not available at night, and wind is not available for almost 6 to 8 months in the year. It is only during about 4 to 6 months that you get good wind power. The other period, it is zero. So there is a point of time when your demand, not the quantum of energy, the demand has to be met by the conventional sources, coal and hydro, and maybe nuclear. So that is the point which we are glossing over, and not much of thought is being given to it. We are only saying that we are adding so many gigawatts of energy and we are getting so much of installed capacity. But we are not talking about the peak demand, how it is met. You raised the point, very relevant point today. And this pumped storage is one area where you can probably match the demand with renewable sources. And pump storage, I don't know whether we are seriously thinking of it. How much is being done for pump storage, I'm not sure.
At the moment, there are only 2 pump storage units working in India, and another 30 more are coming in different places, but they will take about 8-9 years.
Yeah, 2030, definitely it is not going to meet. And are you aware that in spite of all these things, by 2030, we have to still add on to the coal plants existing. The coal plant capacity has to be increased by about 10 to 15% by 2030 to meet the demand.
Yeah.
So that is the situation. That is the situation
right.
today.
Actually, there are.
And number two is about the solar getting converted into heat and steam. I'm surprised that China has taken the lead for this steam generation of electricity, because they are sort of a monopoly for this photovoltaic cells, and they are almost supplying to all over the world. So it is, I don't know, what is their business interest in trying to change over to thermal, solar thermal? Do you have any idea on that?
No, the infrared energy being trapped through mirrors to heat up water is not got commercialized in China yet, even though there are a few setups, some in US, some in some other countries where it has been run, but I don't think they have been run on a commercial level, because you're going to have this as a source of power, and you have to base your entire energy market based on the cost of production, how it will be, and what the discom will buy it. We all got strapped with what has happened to Adani's deal with many states in India, saying that he was trying to sell power to many states, and for that he had to go through some devious ways of getting the contract through. So tomorrow, energy market will have many such temptations to happen. So keep that thing aside. I want to answer one question of yours is regarding coal. India's consumption of coal is going to increase till 2035 for certain.
Correct.
And therefore, coal will not give huge reduction in carbon emission because you're going to increase. Then it will not be increasing this proportionately because we are retiring many old coal plants and building up new coal plants which are more efficient, which produce less amount of carbon, and which has got good mechanisms for carbon capture. So with this, our twin aim by 2030, 50% of installed capacity will be renewable, will be achieved. But 50% of power to be used from renewable will not happen. We will continue to draw more power from thermal than from renewable, even though we may have huge capacity. So that's why the government is trying to push in green corridors and electrolysis plant and things like that. I don't know of any other application which requires, which can work from morning 6 to evening 6 power with only solar panel. Regular production can take place from morning 6 to evening 6 and next day again start. So I don't know how many industries can be set up in that. There could be some industries that are set up in that manner so that they work only for 12 hours, this sort of process. Yeah, any other question?
No, one thing could be the tariff, preferential tariff during daytime and nighttime. That can probably attract some industries to work during daytime and shut off during night. Yeah, that is the only thing which I can see.
Yeah, that
That
is.
is there, that is
But
there.
if you allow too many people to work only during daytime, your peak load will go up.
Correct.
So yeah, that's another issue. So as I told you, it's a very complex subject. We don't realize how much of work goes in giving you 220 volts in your house.
Now, what
A lot
Murali
of work
said,
by electrical guys to make sure this comes.
what Murali said about this tariff regulation, it is they are contemplating KSEB because after smart meter coming, this kind of tariff segregation will be coming from hours to hours like that, peak hours, day hours like that.
Yeah, Sri, smart meters will collect data. Every hour, how much power has been taken by Sri Kumar, how much has been taken by MC Murali and by Dr. Sabu, and like that, the whole state. And then you will generate data. From the data, you'll get patterns of consumption. And based on the patterns of consumption, you will find solutions. Right, agree.
Of course.
Smart meter, I don't think has, I don't know what is the population in Kerala which has got smart meters. Maybe 10%, I'm not sure.
But anyway, it is coming.
And there's been a lot of states who are opposing smart meters as well. So that's another topic.
Yes.
Discussion. Okay, any other questions? Bina, any question?
Any more questions? Yes, Bina ma'am.
Hari.
In India also, there is a solar thermal power plant coming up in Rajasthan. A 50 megawatt solar thermal plant is coming. And that California plant is 392 megawatt. So that is a possibility.
Yeah, I know. It's a possibility. Definitely, it is a possibility at an engineering level. At a commercial level, where you have to produce electricity. Will it be cost effective or not is not very clear at this point of time. Hari, anything?
Any commercial aspects?
Hari, you have to mute yourself. Mute.
Unmute.
No, unmute. Unmute.
ഹരിഹരൻ സാർ കേൾക്കുന്നില്ലേ? അൺമ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്യൂ. Yes.
Technical subject I don't think I can even contribute anything. But one thing I marvel at the dexterity of the Chinese people. From photoelectric cell, they convert into heat, and heat they convert to steam. My only question is the cost of storing the steam in the boilers. It will not be hindering.
Yeah, I agree. Hari, on small correction. Sun gives light and heat.
Yes.
What we are doing in solar panels is only light energy. Heat energy we are not looking at. In my house, there is a solar panel on top. It doesn't produce electricity. It produces hot water. It takes the heat from the sun's infrared energy. So they are going for huge complex by which water can be converted to steam by a set of mirrors which will focus this sun's heat energy, not light, heat energy to produce this abundant heat which is required.
I'm not pushing that. The storage of steam.
Storage of steam is not a big issue because there are many boilers where steam is stored in sufficient number, and you will be able to store enough so that we have continuity in power availability, if not for 12 hours, at least for 4-5 hours. If you have multiple plants available, multiple storage plants available, then you're able to get enough steam generated, because the peak during daytime is so much, we'll be able to generate enough steam. That is why I said, what is your population you're looking at? Are you looking at institution? Are you looking at a campus? Are you looking at a house? Are you looking at a hospital? Accordingly, this has to be designed so that they get 24 hours of steam available from sun's infrared energy. That is the design which is required. You don't take electricity pot. I think it will be cost effective in time, but it may occupy more space for all the boilers to be installed and steam to be given to the generators, to turbines to generate electricity.
So one place I've seen is this Shiddi temple, where they were using it probably about 20 years back. I've seen that they have huge collectors, solar collectors. They convert it into steam, and the entire cooking in that temple is taken care by the steam. So they do it around the clock. It's totally from the solar energy.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you come across that or somebody else has come across that.
There are examples of
ഒരു 8:30 ഒരു ക്ലാസ് ഉണ്ട്, ഞാൻ മറന്നുപോയി പറയാം.
So okay, no, I'm just replying to Murali. Their steam is used as steam.
Yes.
For cooking. Yeah.
Cooking.
The steam is not converted to electricity and then given to your bulbs or fans or etc.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think there are some hurdles to be crossed, technological hurdles to be crossed, and I'm sure when we have some inputs on that, we will discuss again on this issue. I greatly appreciate the questions asked by my fellow college mates, electrical engineers, who are more authoritative and more authorized to speak on the subject. I'm an electronics guy, but I'm happy that they could attend today and share some of their viewpoints. Thank you, Murali. Thank you, Sri. Thank you, Bina.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Once again, we are waiting for next section like this.
Thank you, Prabhu, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bina, okay.